My name is Ajay Ramasubramaniam. I work with Zone Startups India. So we'll keep it like really short. We have a fireside chat. Three great entrepreneurs talking about their journey from a startup to a scale-up, moderated by Sachin Seth from EY. So I'll just cut everything aside and invite the entrepreneurs. So we have Satyen Kothari from Bank on Cube. We have Manavjeet from Ruby and Lucas May from TransferWise and Sachin from EY to moderate this chat. Over to you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening. So it's a very difficult job to, have a conversation on business and that too on fintech, which I think most of you have been listening throughout the day, having a glass in hand and the kind of environment we have here. So I'll try to get the attention from all of you, and I think the panelists what we have, they have a lot of interesting stories to share. So let's see how long we are able to hold your attention, and we'll have question answers post that. So I'm sure there'll be people who are able to hold the glass at the end of the session and still ask questions. Okay, so let's look forward to that. Yeah. So without spending any more time, I think first thing even I want to know, and which is what I'm going to put straight as a rapid fire to all our panelists, because they have come a long way. They have set up successful businesses, they have sold businesses, they have mentored people. I'm going to ask a very simple question, one common question to all of them, and again a repeat question, same to all of them. Tell me your positive experience, most positive or the best experience you have had reaching here in this journey. So Manav, you want to start?
Thanks. In fact, it's been an amazing journey for 3 years. But when I think of positives, I was a banker for almost 20 odd years. Started this, small setup. But when the first person who came on board, who didn't know me at all, and so he bought into the vision of the company, what I was thinking. So that was one time in fact, it changed me. In fact, I realized that this is what probably I can do, something much larger. And so the most positive was, of course, these people who buy into your vision and whom you probably can influence and create something very, very large. That's what I look at it.
So what you're saying is the impact which is made, on the people around you. Absolutely. Is something you look as a most positive experience so far, obviously. Okay, great. Lucas, your thoughts?
I think for me, so we have this thing in TransferWise, we're a money transfer company. We have this thing where we do customer support. So if you ever get a really bad customer support experience, it's probably because I'm on the phones helping out and I don't know what I'm talking about. But one of these times I was doing customer support and it was related to a market that I had launched. So it was Singapore. One of the first things that I did when I joined TransferWise was open up Singapore. And it was a guy who was retiring. He had retired and he was moving to New Zealand. And he was telling me how he actually had brought his retirement date forward because he'd realized he'd saved so much money relocating his funds from Singapore to New Zealand using TransferWise compared to his bank. And to me, I was just like blown away by that. I mean, I used to work in the public sector and everything was fluffy and you don't really see the impact of what you do. Then it was like, yeah, okay. When you're in a startup and you do something and then you see how it impacts people's lives, it was the most positive experience for me.
Excellent. So I'm hearing that, one is the impact on the people and especially the people who have joined the organization, and then we hear a customer story, a very, touchy customer story that how customer, shifting is life-saving and gets benefited by a startup. Fantastic. So, Satyan.
This is my 20th year being an entrepreneur, and I've done 5 companies funded by a Sequoia, by a SoftBank, and I must say this is how cool this conference is, that in 20 years, this is the first time I'm having a single malt on stage. So thanks, Ajay, and everybody. I think the most positive experience has been probably the fact that you never know enough, right? So it's you can't settle into this complacency that a regular job can have, saying I'm a pro. I'm constantly reminded about how many things I'm really bad at, and it makes me feel like shit in the moment, but at the end of the journey, it's like, wow, that was fun to deal with as a challenge.
Great. So I think what I can sense from what you said, Satyan, is that 20 years you have actually made efforts to keep yourself as an entrepreneur, and it's not, otherwise if you set up first company and grown that company, and obviously that company would have become big enough in the league of the big boys, then you wouldn't have been a startup entrepreneur, right? So I think the kick you are getting out of it, and going through the journey again and again, and learning in that process, even after 20 years, I think that's something which is amazing. So I'm sure we have a lot of budding the entrepreneurs here who are looking forward to have their first or second company coming up, succeed. And I think you can see Satyan still after 20 years, he has that kick which he's getting from the whole fintech startup game. So tell me about challenging side of it. I'm sure I can hear, a lot of positivity. I'm sure that there have been a lot of road bumps on the way, and you would have gone through your own lows, whatever reasons. It could be money, it could be people around you, it could be ecosystem. So again, Manav, you want to share one or two points? What are the challenges which typically comes, and how do you really overcome?
Certainly, the biggest issue which I feel is getting rid of the mindset. Like I was a banker, when we started. So when you're starting a fintech, so you're marrying basically financial services and technology. So that's so easy to say. But when it comes to people, so they're when you talk about tech team in our company, a very different set of people and how they operate, how they work. And somebody is coming from a bank who joined the organization, the way they think, what are their thought processes, very different from each other. So the biggest challenge for us was that how we build this particular culture, where there are two very different kind of animals, and you have to make sure they work together to achieve the objective. That was the most challenging part, and of course, we still keep balancing a whole lot of times. But I think that's, in my opinion, the most challenging part from day one was that, and it obviously continues even today at times. We are able to balance this.
Interesting. So I'm sure, it's not only startup, I guess, in the case of even the big companies that remain. So I think that's part and parcel of the business. And so Lucas, you want to share? And especially request to you is because you come from global environment. So you have lived in UK, then Singapore, and any experiences which you can share, India specific? Have you come across any experience? I hope they are all good. But if they are not, they fall in this category, which I am asking you to.
Okay, cool. So I was going to say something else, but now you provoked me. I think
RBI.
yeah, I think regulators and banks, our business relies on both of them. We need licenses from regulators, and we need banks to process payments. And they're both organizations which operate at a very different pace to ours. So I think any startup in this space probably is going to come across one or two of those, one of those challenges where basically you want to achieve something in 3 months and it's going to take 3 years. So I can name many examples, like licenses that took 3 years to get, like Singapore and India. We've been working on for 3 years, and we don't even have anything to show for it yet. So plenty of places where there's lots to improve. But I think when you first asked the question, what actually came to my mind was just the frustration of how much we've still failed. So when I joined TransferWise, we were a lot smaller. We've grown to expand. We do 76 countries. We send money to 76 countries. We send $1.5 billion a month. But we're scratching the surface of this market. And we've been around for 6 years, so we don't have an excuse now. So when I think about the fact that in Europe, it costs 10 times more to send money overseas with your bank. And not just does it cost more, but it's actually really inconvenient. And you get some sassy, crap customer service if anything goes wrong. But still, most people use their banks. And that just shows how much we fail. And for me, that's been probably the biggest challenge. And until we crack that, we've not really achieved much. Like we need to move from being single-digit market share to being like the prime way in which people send money overseas. And we've got the product now, but actually somehow changing consumer behavior has eluded us.
So normally in our panels and whatever panels I moderate, typically we have a bit of diverse background, and I wish there was a bank also here, so that we would have had a little bit counter argument to this. But anyway, I think we'll figure out our own disagreements while we are engaging here. So Satyam, your not so positive experience.
It's a double-edged sword, right? I think, as Manav said, a big reason why you do startups is for working with great people, and that's an amazing feeling when you see people around you grow, challenge you, push you. On the flip side of that, that's also one of the low points, which is when people let you down, and whether it's a bad hire you've made or it's somebody whose agenda is different from yours. It could be a board member, it could be anybody. And I think it's definitely one of the challenges, and I think what hopefully we all get better at is picking that core team that you want to work with. I often warn people who haven't been entrepreneurs that it looks really sexy on the outside, it's really pretty shitty on the inside. So it's really important that you have amazing people around you, and that I think should be the golden rule. So, for example, we've started a secret club called the Good Founders Club, right? Where there's an ethics signature you have to do, a virtual, of course, digital signature, before you can get in, and there's a behavior requirement on that.
That's interesting. So, I think that reminds me that we have had similar challenges in many industries, and let me give an example of construction industry. We had construction industry started by entrepreneurs, and it went in a big way in terms of contributing to the country growth. But that at some point of time we had to bring in a regulator. So I guess I'm not saying that regulator is the right way, but I think the point you mentioned is that the self-governed code of ethics or certain things, because at the end of the day you are representing an industry, you are representing an ecosystem. So whatever you do, basically it also impacts other people around you, right? So Manav, you want to share something on that? I mean, you work with a large ecosystem, right? You are working with almost 80-90 banks and financial institutions. So how do you see this ecosystem working? I mean, is it mostly collaborative? Is it competitive? Is it opportunistic that, today I compete with you, but tomorrow I can collaborate with you depending on which side of the table I am?
So in past 3 years' times, I have seen everything change. When we started off, so of course the market was not very receptive. So when you look at the whole ecosystem, one side you have financial institutions, there's a customer, there are influencers, and there are a whole of other partners. Everybody, first of all, there were very few believers that this is what is possible. That's a starting point. But good news is that of late, I have seen in past 6-8 months' time that the whole ecosystem is very, very responsive. First of all, they're receptive, which was not the case earlier. So in my opinion, any kind of industry has to grow to next level, or any business has to grow to next level, the approach has to be collaborative. And so as a company, when we thought of the model, so the logic was very clear. We should be looking at how we can use technology as an enabler for each and every stakeholder in the whole ecosystem, and that's how we started with the collaboration format. But I personally feel that there are a lot of challenges everywhere, depending on the experiences of the partners you're dealing with sometimes, and of course their own limitations. Like, for example, every bank you deal with, or every financial institution you deal with, all of them are going to be very different from each other. How they respond to your products, your kind of pitch, or anything or where you can collaborate, it varies. And that's where but I am very, very positive at this stage, because the way everything is changing. Starting point is the whole ecosystem is responding. It's in an amazing way, and that's, I think, really great.
All right, let me take a different point of view on that. So I think that it's very common in these panels to hear people talk about collaboration and cooperation and all this stuff. So I don't really believe in any of that. I think that you have customers or you have suppliers, and all this fluffy stuff about how banks are setting up fintech labs and they're embracing and learning and growing and all this stuff. It's just nonsense. So banks are rational entities that want to make money. And if they can make money by getting new customers, then they will do so. If they can make money by becoming suppliers for new companies, whether they're fintechs or construction companies or whatever, then they'll do so. And stuff like fintech labs, these are just like marketing spins put around to find ways to either buy or sell to these new players in the market. From my experience personally, we see that the banks are very clear-minded on this. Like, they will not want us to succeed if we're going to take away their revenue, but they understand, because they're smart and because they're logical, that we are a potential customer of theirs. And if they don't sell to us, we'll go to somebody else. So luckily, in markets where there is some degree of competition, we can find a bank who isn't happy that we're in the market because we're taking away their revenue from international money transfer because they rip people off and steal 5%, which they don't disclose because they mark it up in the exchange rate. They're not happy that we're coming in and undercutting them. Of course they're not. But they also see that the net most positive way for them to drive revenue is to work with us. So I don't see that as collaboration or some fluffy ecosystem development thing. It's just the natural dynamics of competition, suppliers and customers. And where it fails is countries and markets where competition doesn't work effectively. We have banks acting in cartels or single monopolist banks. But luckily, in most markets, we see at least like some degree of competition, and we can drive that competition to work with banks at the best possible deals for us.
That's quite interesting. So, yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head saying there is nothing called collaboration. It's a marriage of convenience. It has to, it is, if there is a bank sees a value in a fintech, bank will collaborate or let's say engage or contract with. If it doesn't see a value, it won't. And obviously everybody tries to protect their business unless somebody else comes and becomes big enough to really impact it. So Satyan, you have been this for a long, long time now. The question I want to ask is very, it is prerogative in the sense that the way our regulation is changing. See, if you see, and I'm sure you are keeping a track of, we have had, starting from wallets to, UPIs and then messengers, and then we have, SEBI's guideline coming on something which is around advisory versus distribution. So see, every week you have something comes out because we have multiple regulators. We have insurance, we have SEBI, we have RBI, and we have UADI also, which is quasi sort of body. Now, I've been seeing as a consultant working with my clients that every week I sit with the client to understand that who are the friends and who are the enemies, right? Or who are the people my client wants to work with and who are the people my client wants to drop. The situation changes almost every week, if not week, maybe bi-weekly, right? And in that, what is happening is that people who actually came as a fintech or a startup and those who disrupted the market for others, today are also complaining that somebody else is coming and disrupting and somebody else, and why it's being allowed, right? I'm not naming anybody here.
Who are you talking about?
I'm not talking about anyone. I've heard it in, I've heard it in the debate of, whether it's a domestic versus foreign or whatever. So I'm saying it is not a debate about an individual incident. It's a debate about that when I was there, when I set it up, I was a startup, I was a fintech, I was supposed to be, handled with the baby gloves. I was supposed to be given all sorts of support system. And now, if somebody else is getting that, well, why it is so? So, you have been through this journey, and I'm sure you have been on the either side of the table multiple times. Give me your, from your heart, the point of view.
So I haven't met Lucas till today, and when we were doing our prep call for this panel, I knew I was going to like this guy because he doesn't speak the normal politically correct bullshit, right, that you hear on every panel. He's right. It's everybody's job to make their business successful. Whether you're a bank, whether you're a startup, whether you're an investor, you are not obliged to anybody else to do favors. You have to figure out how it aligns with your interests, and then you can start espousing all these majestic statements about strategy and collaboration. So, people who are complaining have a right to complain because their business is being affected, their valuations affected, the market share is affected. So what if they were the startups 2 years ago? Now they're the big boys, and they have to play a different role, right? We have to accept it. I think the part which we don't do well, and I wish we do better, is they're the big boys and then they're the small boys, right? And even the small kids don't play well together, right? Whether it's small stage entrepreneurs with their VCs and their backers, we are going against institutions that have tens of thousands of people, are worth billions of dollars. And you know what we do is we fight amongst ourselves, right? We fight for the little PR battle. We fight for the little market angle with the regulator. There's a big country out there. There's a lot of things we can change out there. If we just got to act together as the underdogs and said, let's share a lot more data, let's share the best practices, help each other out, I think we all win at the end of the day. When you expect a bank to help you out when they're doing pretty well, I think you're shooting for something ridiculous. But when you expect a fellow entrepreneur to help you out, I think that's well within your rights.
Interesting. So let's move to a slightly different perspective, people perspective. Okay, I think all fintechs, startups are the core foundation is people. So entrepreneurs come, they have people coming on board, and Satyan, as we discussed, you had a bunch of people also sort of given a level of co-founder at the time of setting up your company. So how do you manage? Because is it not a challenging task that attracting people, and obviously once you are well funded, once you have given them options, etc., how do you retain them? How do you keep them motivated to continue with that same zeal what they started with? So Manav, you are already have gone through this cycle a couple of times, and now you are sizable enough. What's the journey like?
So when we started off, I must say it was disastrous. So when we started hiring, so again a typical banking style, we started looking at what kind of profiles. But after some time we realized the people who are coming from those institutions, when they join a startup, all they were looking for that everything is available here, all have to perform the similar kind of job. But they never realize that a startup is all about, because you are every day you're evolving. And so it means you have to be on your toes, you have to keep evolving, keep learning every day. So the first year we made a lot of such mistakes, but after that we figured out that people who come for the right reason, at least that whether they really feel that something they're adding, or in terms of where they can contribute, what product we're building, how we can add to the whole ecosystem or something like that, they should come for the right reasons. The people who come for a particular title because you are a smaller startup, you're coming for a larger bank, they can get a larger title or some additional amount of money, they are definitely avoidable. And this has really worked for us. Now our average, almost more than 50% of our people, rather 60% of our people are more than 2.5 years in the company for a startup, which is not bad. And the reason for that has been only one, I always figure out, what exactly is the kick for that guy? What is the excitement for that guy? Who's coming over? Why he or she is joining the organization? And I think that is the most important question you should ask anybody who's coming on board. Otherwise, you will end up attracting a lot of people who may use you as just a bridge. Probably somebody is out of job and they say, okay, I'm excited, I want to be part of a startup. But after 3 months, you figure out he didn't have anything, and he just came to you and just used you. So I think that is the learning, the biggest learning. And of course, you can't be right 100% times. We still make mistakes, but the DNA of the organization, like for example, for us, is very clear. It's like people who are excited about the idea, who are coming for those reasons. That's something to look for.
So I'll come to Satyan, and then Lucas, I'll come to you for the slightly different question. So Satyan, my second leg of the question was that one is attracting talent, getting them motivated, getting them to work together, succeed. And once they have succeeded, they have obviously made certain success, and that is also financial success. How do you keep them motivated post that? Because young bunch of people who have put their career on stake, and then obviously they have got rewards for it at a younger age, a very young age, right? Now, one option is like we have seen many startups that obviously they cash out, the management control goes to elsewhere, the founding team moves to new things, right? And this is a right way. This is possibly one way to do, right? But if one wants to convert this fintech or a startup into a large organization, obviously the journey is going to be, let's say a decade. And you have in those journey the points wherein people are fairly financially secured and satisfied. So why would they continue to put in the same amount of efforts? And how do you really look at that as is it a challenge or is it a good situation to have? And you have gone through it, so I would like to, people would like to hear from you.
So whenever I see morale is low, right, I have a favorite saying, um, the beatings will continue until morale improves. But that doesn't work, right? I think one of the lessons I learned from some of the top names that I was very lucky to spend some time working with, right? One was a company called Silicon Graphics. Another was Apple. Is that there's a deep DNA, and we dismiss culture and DNA very easily, but there's a deep DNA of how great companies are built, right? So at Apple, I was the designer, the user experience designer, and I had 8 engineers who would push me so hard saying that's not good enough, that design isn't simple enough. And this was in the dark days of Apple when it was really in bad shape in 1996, before Steve Jobs came back. Same thing at Silicon Graphics, it was all about engineering, right? If you were a great engineer, you were there, that was the company to be at in 1997. So when you analyze that, it's people like to, your employees also need to match a certain DNA that your company has, and it's the same as your customers. What are your customers going to see as a key value proposition in your product? The same thing you have to ask about your team members. So at Citrus Pay, I think it was very clear that it was a sales organization. So anybody who was hungry to sell, it was a great fit for them. It wasn't a great fit for somebody who wanted to build great software or tech, right? It was a byproduct function. And that's why when we started, we outsourced it to Pune. At Cube, it's very different. We want to build on design and on software. So from the 12 people I have in the team, 11 of them are engineers. And that's what gets them motivated, saying it's an engineering problem we are trying to solve around money. Now, we have shitty days as well, right? But that's when an engineer really says, why is my system not working? Because I coded this wrong. And if you hire a great engineer who wants to do great work, that shitty day gets converted into a big adrenaline rush saying, this is my job, I need to fix it. Right? So I think that's the answer to say, how do you keep going during the good days, the bad days? It's find what your DNA is and hire for that, optimize for that.
Sure. So Lucas, last question to you, and then we'll open to the audience for the questions. So you're working in a different geography, and what are the 2 or 3 things you want to sort of share, make a suggestion to Indian fintech ecosystem in terms of people, in terms of probably, I won't use the word culture, or maybe say, let's say the way we have organized ourselves. Would you want to sort of, in whatever you have observed, what do you think, something which we can quickly fix or correct to be able to take it forward much faster? Because not all entrepreneurs and fintech founders are going and engaging with the people elsewhere. So any thoughts you have?
Okay, there's no quick fixes, but I can think of like one trick that we have at TransferWise. So when I joined TransferWise, I was employee number 201. I know that because the guy who joined before me had a limousine pick him up and take him to the office, and there was a big party, and I got nothing. We're now 800 people, and we're still growing very fast. We still operate in a kind of very devolved decision-making structure where we move. I think we move as fast as we did when I joined, if not faster. And so the trick we have, or the trick that's been working so far, it might fall down at some point, but the trick is to keep that speed as you scale up and not become a bank is quite a simple one. So we just kept splitting the organization into little startups. So we're a mission-driven organization. This came to your point. You said everything there is to be said about like hiring. I agree with all of that. Like, you just got to hire people who believe in the mission. If they're in it for the money or the job title or whatever, there's no point. And so we have all these people who believe in the same overarching mission, like make international money transfers free and make them instant. And that's the mission. And like literally everyone's on the same page with that. And the great thing about that is you can just keep subdividing the organization. So how do we get to 800 people and have no committees? And the way to do that is you just keep creating submissions that are autonomous. So every team we have has everything it needs to succeed. So where I used to work in the public sector, if you wanted to get something done, you'd have to find resource in the IT team. And they got too cumbersome and we were at risk of slowing down. We just subdivided and said, okay, you're no longer responsible for the world, you're responsible for Asia. So that's one hack that you could use.
Jeff Bezos, 2 pizza principle.
That's fantastic. So what you're saying is that don't try to force fit a structure in the beginning. Let it be the way people can come together and work in a small teams. And once the team grows, then you can put a structure to it. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So we have some time before we get into, networking. So, request from audience. Any questions to the panelists?
Can we first thank this audience for just listening and avoiding alcohol and chatting?
Yes,
That's
thank
amazing.
You. Thank you so
guys.
much for that. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you. A big round of applause for that. Yes.
Nothing? Alcohol?
Please.
What is the Good Founders Club, and what is the structure for it?
It's always good to throw one wild card out there, right? So I'll answer it seriously because that's, I've been in India for 8 years and I've seen that there are so many different people who are so motivated to start companies here. And it's amazing to have that energy. And you realize with time that there are some people who are doing it for the wrong reasons, some people who are doing it for the right reasons. And as you evolve, there's beyond the basics of right and wrong, there's, I think, certain ethics we should hold ourselves up to, right? When we hire people to trust us, to start in a small basement office, how are we going to take care of those first few employees? How are we going to take care of our angel investors who give us money basically on a coffee conversation, right? Are we going to squeeze them out later on because, a nice big blue chip VC fund decided to back you? Are you going to? I think these are important things that get lost when you are rushing in an economy like India. And I think this is what a few of us were discussing and saying we really wish it was different, but you can't just wish it. So how do we start imposing it amongst the founders we trust and we interact with? Some of us are angel investors. How do we impose it on our portfolio companies, saying, I expect this from you upfront, and that this is how you're going to behave 5 years from now. If you're going to be successful, this is what you're going to do. If you're not going to be successful, this is how I expect you to be graceful. And it's kind of the loose structure of a founders club. You should talk to Lizzie there. She's the president.
So if there are any questions, most welcome. If no questions, then I have a question to panelists. See, all my eminent panelists here, they are successful entrepreneurs, and I'm sure they have been thinking about many ideas, right? And they have only launched or they have worked on, let's say 1 or 2 of them. We want to be selfish and greedy here. We want to know from them that what is the idea they want to share for someone who want to launch a company, or what is the trend? What is the trend, right? Do you want me, suppose I want to become an entrepreneur tomorrow, right? Would you suggest that I should go towards investment side, like launch a robo-lend, advisory company, or go towards lending side? Is credit growth going to be more, or the investment growth is going to be more? This is, so you could, even healthcare, you could tell me that, okay, launch. So we want some tip here, right? At least I want it. So all 3 of my, panelists here, please give us some tips. We will obviously judge ourselves whether we can do, but where is the market moving? What is the trend? What has the potential to succeed more than others?
So, from my perspective, I'll share how I think. First of all, fintech is very open-ended kind of word. What is fintech, and whether it's payment or lending. When I'm talking about specifically lending, so when what comes to my mind today, if we have to think of something which is probably a very large opportunity, because past 1 year, if you see, you scan through Economic Times or any newspaper for that, you have one new announcement that this NBFC got funded so much, and there's another one doing some small ticket loan or somebody doing business loans. But I personally feel that all said and done, the basics remain more or less same. So in my opinion, the next big thing will come from probably, which will be working using maybe AI or ML and something on the collection side, which is definitely missing, because one side you have so many NBFCs mushrooming, and so many financial institutions in expanding their network. But I have not come across even a single name till date who's working really, on the collection side, and how tech can be leveraged for that. I say how can you use AI, ML for that, and some way make some sense of the data, and that is something which I personally feel is a huge opportunity.
I think that's really valuable. Tip. I'm going to note it down. Collections. Okay. Because what's your suggestion?
How to be a billionaire? That's what he's asking.
I mean, all I can think of is all the startup ideas I had, didn't do, and then saw other startups did them and were really successful. So I don't have any good advice. All I would say, I think, based on like having a couple of painful experiences of seeing that, is execution is everything. And people who go around saying, "I've got this idea, but I can't share it with you," it's just rubbish. Like, ideas are meaningless until you actually spend the time to go and execute them. So if you're sitting on an idea and you think, this could be the next big thing, like just do it and like try and fail really quickly. Because I have like at least 2 or 3 where I just should have just done it and I didn't because I was too lazy.
I have a negative list and a positive list. Negative list, don't do payments unless you want to compete with WhatsApp and you want to join a few founders in complaining about the regulator. That business model is dead. On the positive list, I've always had this fantasy of a business I want to build, and I'll never have the guts to build it because it needs a lot of patience. It even has a name, OneTightSlap.com, right? And this is a civic service app that you should build, where you can take photos of anything that's wrong in your neighborhood, like a pothole, somebody being corrupt, somebody throwing trash on the ground. And it should be a community thing where everybody else gives them a virtual slap and tries to fix it. So I'd love to build that, but...
Fantastic. So I think with this, we come to the close of our panel. And so thank you very much to our eminent panelists. Thank you. Thanks for sparing your time. And thanks to the audience. Look forward to engage with you, interact with you, and please feel free to sort of ask any questions you didn't want to ask in public to the panelists. So we'll be there soon in few seconds. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks. Have a wonderful time. Thank you.